Gentlemen, welcome back. The latest on the Ohio State University shooting. We have, well, actually, it wasn't a shooting. Here's the clarification. The latest is that the attacker, who is dead, and the scene is secure at Ohio State University. We have 10 people injured, one critically. They're at local hospitals. And the damage was done with a knife and a car. The reports of an active shooting scene were from eyewitnesses, apparently, who heard police shooting. Not the attacker. The attacker, as far as I've now been led to believe, did not harm anybody by shooting. It was with a knife and a car. So we'll give you more details as they become available. But I want to let you hear some of this. Fidel Castro was a thug, a dictator, and garbage, okay? And it's good that he's dead, because anytime the world loses a thug who kills hundreds of thousands of people and jails people for their political views and runs a communist dictatorship, the world is better when they're rid of that person. But don't tell it to the media, and don't tell it to Geraldo Rivera.
If you were from the middle down in Cuban society, in the hierarchy, and you got free medicine that you didn't have under the dictator Batista, if you got some, if you could start a little business, if you could get access to higher education that you couldn't get unless you were an elite under Batista, the dictator that preceded communism and Castro and led to the revolution, you know, you think of Castro in a whole different way. And I think that, in fairness, when you look at him and you talk about him, and I heard Governor Huckabee and slamming him, and he's a creep and a dictator and a repressive monster and all the rest. But if you ask the man in the street in Havana today...
If you ask the man in the street in Havana today, they'll go to jail if they say anything else. Geraldo, they're not free to say anything. Geraldo, are you kidding me? That last statement by you negates your whole argument. More.
I've been to Cuba several times, particularly back in those days when they were really shut off. I think that it's very easy to have a simplistic view that he was all awful for Cuba and the world, and I just don't think that's accurate. I think that the Cubans have a tremendous sense of pride over his legacy, and I think that he will be remembered fondly. Yes, he was a leftist. Yes, he was a communist. Yes, his economic system failed. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, the Cuban medicine is renowned the world over. There are aspects of what he left behind.
Tell it to the people that he left behind in the gulags, Geraldo. Cuban medicine, this myth. Cuban medicine is so... Hey, Geraldo, if you need bypass or brain surgery or, God forbid, anything, you going to Cuba? Or you going to the best hospital here in New York City or anywhere in the United States? You going to go to Cuba? Huh? Give me a break. Really, give me a break. Let's go back in time. Peter Jennings, 1989.
Castro has delivered the most to those who have the least. And for much of the third world, Cuba is actually a model of development. Education was once available to the rich and the well-connected. It is now free to all. On January the 1st, 1959, when the Cuban dictator Batista left the country for good, only a third of the population could read and write. Today, the literacy rate is 97%.
I'm sorry, this is comedic. What are they reading? They can't read whatever they want to read. They're given what to read. They're told what to think. If they try to read something they're not allowed to, or if they say something they're not allowed to, or think something they're not allowed to, they're gone. They turn up missing. They're in prison or worse. But it's so wonderful they can read. It's just great. This is like a comedy show. And then, of course, Peter Jennings in '89 also signed on to the great health care watch.
Medical care was once for the privileged few. Today, it is available to every Cuban, and it is free. Some of Cuba's health care is world class. In heart disease, for example, in brain surgery. Health and education are the revolution's great success stories.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, may he rest in peace. Peter Jennings had lung cancer. I don't know if he tried to go to Cuba, or I don't know if you even know if he could at that point. It may be unfair, but if he were alive today and had lung cancer, would he be on the first plane to Cuba? Would he be on that JetBlue plane that couldn't stop hearing? I was driving in and listening to one of the old news stations, and all they kept saying, oh, the first JetBlue plane to Cuba, now it's here, and now it's on the runway, now the doors are closing, and now who cares? You think it's going to help the people of Cuba? No, it's not going to help the people of Cuba. It's a joke. It's really a joke. And then let's listen to PBS 1990.
He insists that the system is sound and will work once the mistakes of the past are corrected and the workforce properly motivated. It is not easy to disagree with Fidel. He has defined revolutionary democracy as mass participation. It has also meant following him through action-packed decades of experiments in collective survival and socialist living. A veritable force of nature, Fidel has guided the revolution, destroying the old and building the new Cuba. His power has blown through the island with hurricane force.
It's touching. It's touching. The great, great Fidel. This is sick. This is sick. This is sick. These are the people, I know this was in 1990, these are the people who would say Donald Trump is a Nazi, okay? Steve Bannon is a Nazi, a white nationalist, yet they love Fidel. They love Fidel. They're sick people. And let's go to the McLaughlin Group and the great Eleanor Clift. Watch this one.
Frankly, to be a poor child in Cuba may, in many instances, be better than being a poor child in Miami.
And I'm not going to condemn
their lifestyles so gratuitously.
I think that was Michael Barone. Yeah, Michael Barone from the Washington Examiner. That was a long time ago. We've all changed. I could show you pictures of me, as a matter of fact. And then, remember Elian Gonzalez? How Janet Reno, who just passed away not too long ago, gave over under Bill Clinton's orders, Elian Gonzalez back to Cuba. Watch.
Fidel Castro, and certainly justified on his record, is widely criticized for a lot of things. There is no question that Castro feels a very deep and abiding connection with those Cubans who are still in Cuba. And I recognize this might be controversial, but there's little doubt in my mind that Fidel Castro was sincere when he said, listen, we really want this child back here.
Of course. We need to brainwash him and indoctrinate him and make him a good communist. These people, I don't know what. All right, Kate Snow, CNN, 2002.
According to a United Nations study, Cuba's regular schools rank at the top in Latin America. Old mansions were converted to classrooms. Under pictures of gun-toting revolutionaries, children are taught Cuban history, along with computer skills, English, and all the basics. For a developing nation, the literacy rate is exceptional at 96%, according to the UN.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is their love stat. They keep over and over and over. We're going to skip now to Barbara Walters. We're going to skip to 101. Barbara Walters, 2002. Barbara Walters never failed to praise a dictator that she interviewed.
For Castro, freedom starts with education. And if literacy alone were the yardstick, Cuba would rank as one of the freest nations on earth. The literacy rate is 96%.
What does it matter what the literacy rate is when you're not free to express yourself, when you're not free to choose what you read, when you're only free to choose what the government puts in front of you and says this to this day? They can't get on the internet. They can't communicate on their cell phone. It's a repressive, dictatorial, tyrannical dictatorship. Who cares if they could read? Misses the point, wouldn't you say? Don't tell it to the media. They hate Trump. He's a communist. I mean, he's not a communist. He's evil. But Fidel Castro, he was some kind of guy. J.D. Hayworth is next with hour number 2 of America Talks Live.